Hello, hi everybody, welcome to lesson 15 of Funerary Archaeology free course. This lesson will tackle Roman burials and funerary rites. In yesterday's lesson, we spoke about the Etruscan society, and we know that in the very last phase of the Etruscan society, they overlapped and were englobated into the Roman society. In fact, the last three mythological kings of Rome, under the legend, they went under the legend, were from Etruscan origin and ethnicity. So the Romans brings in their culture many features that they taken from Etruscan society and religion, but also they bring with them a lot of features that are common with the Greek society as well, because they share during the time in which the Roman society flourished, they share a lot of a relation, and many of the teachers that were employed by the Roman elite were in fact of Greek ethnicity and ancestry, because culture back then was regarded as a Greek matter, whilst politics and all, I will say, pragmatic matters were regarded as Roman and Latin. So I see new people coming. Hello. I see some comment. Hello, hi Alejandra, nice to meet you. See you again. And this is one of the last lesson that I'm doing in streaming. I want to ask you all, and I repeat that question even in classroom, so please let me know your thinking. Next week, I meant for you to study the new material that I will post in the next days on Google Classroom. And if you have any question regarding the course, regarding something that you want to focus more, something that you didn't understand, we will meet again here via streaming. So let me know if you want something like this. If you have something that you want to they keep talking about, I don't know, about biology, human bones excavation, pathology, taphonomy, whatever you may want to know. I'm here, so please let me know in your comments. So, shall we begin? This lesson will be fun and with a lot of talking and a lot of subject, so keep with me. So, starting from the very beginning, the Roman view of the underworld and afterlife was based mainly on the Greek one. And as you can see here in that map, the view of the underworld that was described in the Aeneid by Virgil, the Roman poet Virgil, shares same feature as the underworld that was believed from the Greek one. It was surrounded by the river or the ocean Styx. It has a different type of places for the soul: Tartar, which we can call hell, modern hell, and Elise, the Elysium, that we can relation to our paradise, to our heaven. In between, there are many stages in which the soul start their voyage. The Roman believe, as the Greek, that the soul were carried through the living world to the afterlife, the world of the dead, by the farrier Charon. We encounter the same figure even in the Etruscan culture and society, but Charon for the Etruscan has a different meaning and different shape. Is still a psychopompos, carrier of a soul figure, but it's not a farrier, and it's more like a demon, an underworld demon, and so on. So the very first thing that to keep in mind regarding Roman religion is that the religion was not a soteriological one. Soteriological means one that have the salvation of the soul, such as the Christian one, for example. So there was no salvation in the afterlife, and the dead could live happy or more or less happy existence. In contrast to the Greek underworld, where for a certain period of time it was believed that the soul were shadow-like. They have no feelings at all. They are in complete apathy. And each dead can have its own individuality. And it was also believed that the spirit of the dead will be around their tombs and the house of the living. So they must be honored with rituals. So the Romans believed that a dead body or corpse is funestum, which means is impure, and so all the people and the places in which the dead body went in contact to were called funesti. They are impure as well. So when the period of a dead body of the funestum happen, it does correspond to the liminal or intermediate period that hairs underline. And so that moment of bad feeling of impurity had to be sedated with rites, and then after the period of rites, it could happen the burial time. The soul of the dead, for the Romans, it was not believed to be a simple soul, but instead it was regarded as a sort of gas god, chthonic, which means from the underworld, deities, and that gas god could be benevolent, a well-disposed spirit, and that went under the name of manes, which means good. And the way to sedate a manes is through an offering of blood sacrifice, and that was the origin of the gladiator games, which in fact were called munera. Let's remember that the gladiator games were originated from the Etruscan society as well, in which they were performed during the liminal phase of a funerary ritual as well, to help the purification of the deceased. And they were called munera by the Latin, in the 3rd century before Christ, from the word munos, which underlined and described the duty of the citizen. So it was mandatory for a citizen to make a blood sacrifice. Or it could be, as I said, through gladiator games or through fights between prisoners or slaves. But what happened if a tomb was profaned, was defiled or abandoned? Because we have just said that they believe that the spirit of the deceased will continue into the staying in the surrounding of their tomb. So the spirit became bad, malicious, and that went under the name of lemures or larvae. So the manes are the good god spirit, their deity that in which was transformed, was believed to become the spirit of the deceased. The lemures, larvae, are the bad deity, and the lares and penates are still a ghost god spirit of the deceased, a good one, but they are the spirit of the ancestors, and they protect the family, houses, and all the members of a specific family. And they are worshipped at the household shrines. You can see here this manibus calpurnie, engraving of an inscription dedicated to the manes, Dies Manes, and a very famous statue of a Roman citizen, which brings the portrait of its lares and penates. But we will talk about the specific aspect later. So the moment of death happened in a stage, different phase of the ritual. At first, when a person died, a family member kisses the deceased and closes his or her eyes, and that is meant to be for the gathering of the collection of the last breath of the deceased. Then happened the conclamatio. The person which is dead is called to make sure that her is really dead. Then a series of kins of funerary moans and tintinnambula happened to make noises for express the mourning, and also for keep out of the house, of the enclosure of the deceased, the bad spirits, bad ghosts. Then there is the deposition. The corpse is placed on the ground, and then happen we can call all that phase the first phase of the moment of death. The second phase, which happened to the Earth's liminal intermediate period, is the wake. The Roman wake usually lasted a period of time between 3 to 7 days. And during the wake, the corpse is prepared, is washed. All that is made mainly by the women of the house. Is washed with hot water. It was put and ointed with oils that was believed to block the decomposition or block out the smell of the decomposition. And then it's dressed, and the clothing are enriched with flower garlands, if the deceased is a woman, or with toga and a signet seal, if the deceased is man. Also a coin, the so-called obolos, it's placed in the mouth, and that is for paying Charon. After the preparation of the body is displayed, and that stage is called prothesis from the Greek, and it's the same as in the Greek ritual. And the feet of the deceased are facing the entrance of the house. Also, there are lit candelabra, oil lamps, and incense, and also there are placed a lot of flour to keep in contact the deceased with light, and light is a symbol of life and all that good. And fir branches are put outside the house, and the fireplace inside the houses are extinguished for a display of mourning. Here you can see some reliefs from sarcophages and plaques found in tombs. Here you can see the display, the prothesis of a female, and some action of grief mourning. And also under here you can see all the torches that were lit, flower garlands, the tableau, the bed, the deathbed in which the deceased is placed, and all the people, also some musicians and some plays such as games are performed. After that time happened the funeral procession, and you can see here on a sarcophagus the engraving and the depiction of the various phases of the funeral procession. There are some wind instrument players, some people who brings the torches, and the so-called prefike, which are paid women that they work as a crier, as a mourning crier for the deceased. They constantly cries out loud deeds and mournings songs about the deceased, and they also scratches their faces with their nails or rip out their hairs, and they were paid. Then there is the conductor, which is the one which leads the ferretrum. The ferretrum is the structure in which it's placed on the deathbed the deceased, still in display. The dead is has his face uncovered, and it's carried by a family or friends, very close friends member, all dressing up into dark clothes. Other family or friends follow the ferretrum, but outstanding, eminent and higher level people from the society of that time carry the ancestor mask as that specific sculpture represent, and they also carry sign with title and deeds from the deceased, from the dead people, and they also make an analogy, the so-called laudatio funebris, talk about the dead person, the dead individual. You can see here some reconstruction image. You can see here different type of wind instrument players. The ferretrum with horses, prefike, family friends member, and higher level people from society which carried, you can see here, I hope you can see, the mask of the ancestor. So, at the end of that period, of all that rites that I underlined before, there is the end of the liminal period, and then happen the post-liminal stage, or the rite of aggregation, which is the third stage of the rite. That could be underlined and could be seen as in the day of the burial, which they performed a consecration of the burial, of the tomb, with a pig sacrifice, a porca precidanea, and a purification feast held by family members, which was called silicernium. 9 days after the burial, the family members and guests commemorate their dead with a novendiale, a feast, and ludi gladiatori, gladiator games, novendiales, which happen in the 9th days. For the anniversary, they place flower on the tomb. They make a feast for family members only, not for guests, which is named parentatio, and a symbolic meal for the dead, which is called cena feralis. Also, libation, profusiones, were made with the blood of sacrificed victims, milk, honey, and wine. All of that libation are made on the altar over the tomb or around on the tomb external sign with an amphor, a pottery or a burnt clay or lead tube that was placed, and with it was placed from the top of the tomb directly in the pit, in the grave space leading to the deceased one. So, what about the burial types that were used by Romans? Well, both cremation and inhumation were performed by the Romans. Cicero believes that inhumation was the ancient rite, but the archaeology record underline that they both exist, both the ritual exists, both cremation and inhumation were performed ever since the dawn of Roman society. That was also underlined and described in a law, in one of the 12 tablets laws, which were dated in about the 450 before Christ, which said, "Hominem morturum in ube ne seppellito ne urito," which can be translated in "the dead man cannot be buried or cremated in ube, in the city, in the town." So, as for the Greek society and also Etruscan society, also the Romans did not bury their dead inside their town, but on the outside. Also, by the archaeological records, we know that cremation was the most used funerary and burial ritual from the 3rd century before Christ up to the 1st century Anno Domini, while inhumation was most used from the 1st, 2nd century Anno Domini, and was used alone, completely alone, from the 4th century Anno Domini. There are also some examples of embalming, but they are rare. Why this change? Because in the 1st century Anno Domini and so on, up to the 4th century Anno Domini, new rites, new cults happen to be imported into Rome, thanks to new conquests for the Roman Empire, such as rebirth cult and chthonic cult of the Mitra, and also Christianity. Here you can see a depiction of cremation with a dead body placed on top of a sort of a table, that bed. Grave goods are placed beneath. This is all the wooden trunks that will be lit, and this is the hollow, the pit in the ground. Also, there is other wooden placed here, and this is a depiction of a first primary type of cremation, the type of cremation that happened in the same place as the pyre, the funerary pyre. And we have a very interesting description of a cremation ritual made by Virgil in the 6th book of Aeneid, that described the funeral of Misenus. And so there are different stages. The first one is, of course, the preparation of the funerary pyre by different type of woods. And on the outer layer, as you can see here, it was placed cypress wood, because it was one of the three with a high symbolic meaning and was linked to the underworld. It was the wood of the dead. Was prepared the corpse. It was the preparation of the corpse, and happened, as I was mentioning earlier, with the washing, the oil, the clothing. So the corpse is placed here on the pyre. Items that happen to be in possession of the deceased, or are offering, or food offerings, or grave goods, are placed on the outside of the pyre or on the pyre. And then the pyre was lit and happened the cremation. And after the cremation is extinguished, there is the deposition of burnt remains into an urn, and the purification of the people that attended the funeral. And the very last step, described by Virgil, is the building of the tomb. We talk a lot about cremation. Romans happen to perform different types of cremation. The very first one, the most simple one, is the primary cremation, which went under the name of bustum. And it's a direct cremation, as I was illustrating to you before. This is a bustum. It's the same place of the tomb. While the secondary cremation, the so-called indirect cremation, went under the name of ustrinum, and happened when the pyre, the funerary pyre, was performed in a place, and the end burial happened to be in another place. The most used type of burial are a simple pit in the ground, covered with bricks and shingles in a shape of a roof, which is called by Italian name cappuccino, or in an amphor, denkitrismos, which was a very old type of burial. Its origin laid very back in time, from the prehistoric period, the Neolithic period. You can see here different types, but during the Republican times and so on, in the 1st century, in Republican and Imperial time of Rome, the first century Anno Domini, there happened a monumentalization of tombs. So we passed from a very simple prime deposition to a more complex one. Also, the monumentalization of that tomb happened to be enclosed, and many different tombs are put inside the enclosed space, and usually they are all a family tombs or a genus, a gens, are a clan of the town, of the city in which they lived. There are different types of indirect cremation burial. As for the direct one, a simple one into the ground with a simple pit, with or without, you can see here with, tube for libation, or into rock slabs, into brick slabs, into pottery elements, as you can see here, or can be not in the ground, and the urn with the ashes of the deceased and elements of the grave goods were placed not in a pit in the ground, but outside the ground in a sarcophagus or in elements made with masonry. And also the type of funerary space can be both open and closed. And in the closed form, we happen to have mausoleum, hypogeum. Mausoleum are monuments, structure built outside, hypogeum on the inside of the ground, but they are still made by, they are not simple pit, they are more like chamber and cunicles and tunnels, a real city or houses of the dead in the underground, and columbaria. So, as I was mentioning before, all the tombs were placed outside the towns. From the beginning of the Roman society, from the 8th to the 3rd century before Christ, they happened to be in hypogeum, in chamber tomb, and they were placed with a not regular order, but they are placed in an irregular form. The differences of statues of place in the social pyramid was underlined by the paintings and the grave and the funeral goods that were placed in the graves. A person of a higher social status happened to have a tomb, a chamber tomb, with paintings that depict a military or social life scene. And also, by the 3rd century before Christ up to the 1st century Anno Domini, there was a plethora of aristocratic tombs that were monumentalized, that were made greater and much more visible, and they were placed, as you can see here, along the streets, while the tombs of the poorest elements of the population were placed in the background. They were not visible. And by the 1st and the 2nd century Anno Domini, there were more masonry, building bricks tombs and columbary that they share a more egalitarian view of a society. And there were not differences in the grave goods or in the decoration of the tomb, but they are more or less just the same. Some columbaries have a different shape. Some of them have a sort of small temple, edicola, that was meant to be in the very first step for the different genos, a different family clan member, the richest one, the more wealthier. But as the time went by, they more or less shared the same space in a columbary. So during the first and the second century Anno Domini, both of the ritual, the inhumation and the cremation happened. They were performed hand to hand, and we can see here a record of a double burial, of a double type of ritual. One inhumation, the man was, probably the husband, was inhumated, while the spouse, the wife, was cremated. With inhumation happened to be the same typologies as the cremation, and that I was underlining here. Single, they have a very simple pit into the ground, not in the ground, with tube for libation, with some sort of enclosure of containers, in open funerary space or in a closed funerary space. All that differences happen again for the inhumations, but with the differences of the container of the human remains, because as you can imagine, for a burned human remains, it was placed in an urn, while the inhumated body need a much bigger container, such as a sarcophagus. And the Roman sarcophaguses are an example, show example of the mythology, the religion. They contain engravings and reliefs that were taken from the myth, and they are scenes that brings with them the meaning of afterlife, of rebirth, immortality, all of which was linked to the Orphic cults, Mithraism, for example, while the sarcophagus that share scenes taken from common life are regarded as the one of an inhumated, of a deceased person who will still follow not Orphic cults or non-traditional cult and religion, but instead follow the Roman traditional religion. You can see here a scene of Bacchus, Dionysus, which was linked with the concept of rebirth and immortality, and a scene from Meleagrus, also from the concept of rebirth. Here at last I show you some image from different type of grave goods that you can find, from the very simple vases, pottery, to oil lamp, to items, vases that contains elements for the makeup, from the personal hygiene. Also there is a mirror, a signet ring, and also items of decoration of the body, fibulae, pins from the dresses and hairs, and also a necklace. So I have ended my presentation here. I hope that you find it interesting. Oh, thank you for the comments. Given the subject, I didn't I didn't think that you will. Sorry, someone is calling me. Sorry again. I didn't think that someone would feel good vibes from talking about dead people, but I'm glad that this is your vibe. Thank you. So, if there are not any questions, I'm waiting for the delay. Also, into the columbaria are buried in later times Christians, and they share because they were not in the greatest position in ancient Rome. They were persecuted, so they created they extend the Roman columbaria, and they created galleries and tunnels, which are sort of what we can call town of the dead, because they can perform a Christian ritual and religion without being noticed by the Romans. And so they reprise certain elements of decoration that were used by the Romans in the sarcophagus for painting the walls of the columbaria, and they share myth of Dionysus, for example, or Mithra, that was renamed by them as the figure of Jesus. Just a quick example. There were also some sarcophagus that happened to have a window, a glass window, placed right on the top of the lid of the sarcophagus for continuing viewing the dead body. If I remember well, was the position of a female child. So it shows some kind of devotion that the family performed for their loved one. And so there is also a different meaning, and it was linked, that specific type of burial and inhumation, it was linked to the rebirth theory of Mithraism. So, if you didn't have any more questions, as you can see, Romans took many things from different cultures, from Etruscan and Greek, and something even in the symbol and in some minor deities from the ancient population that lived in Italy in prehistoric time, but is rather normal considering the length and the space of the Roman Empire. They try to subdue new conquered population instead of by obligation, but with englobation of their cultures, of their cult and ritual into the Roman one. It's a very nice example of cohabitation and also multicultural environment, safe environment. So if there are not any more questions, I leave here. As I was mentioning earlier in the video, if you have any more topics, matters that were not taken under consideration by my lessons, and you want to have a specific lesson on them, or to have some clarification, please let me know on Google Classroom or under the comment here of this video. And by next week, I will let you know. I am planning to make, I don't know what you prefer. So if you prefer smaller videos, such as 1 to 5 minutes long videos of answer to one specific topic at a time, or if you prefer sort of a round table about all the course, in which you can be in stream with me and comment and share question and everything. So let me know. I thank you all. Thank you for joining me into this course, and have a nice weekend. See you later. See you next week. Bye bye.